Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Donna Fiesel, and I'm your host of Donna's Edge Talk Show, where truth matters. Thank you so much for watching every day, Monday through Friday, beginning at 1 p.m. That's on the Central Time Zone. For you folks out in the Eastern Time Zone, it's going to be 2 p.m. But we thank you guys so much for watching. You're the reason we do what we do, and continue sending emails. You're not bothering me. I promise you're not. Some of you have been sending, now, Donna, I don't want to bother you, but I've got a question, so that's not a bother. Continue it. Donna at donnasedge.com. Donna at donnasedge.com. We are syndicated, and we are found on Abundance Television, found on Roku, Apple TV, and Amazon Fire. Don't forget the podcast. I think that's where a lot of you viewers are coming from. The podcast is found on the Newscasters.com. You can find us on all the social media sites. We just went on ahead and did TikTok. And so we're seeing what's coming out of that. I'm getting a lot of you youngsters are pretty much interested in conservatives. That's kind of, I was not expecting that. I'm proud. It gives me hope.
It is changing.
It's very, for one thing, you don't do what your parents did. So some of you have grown up with your parents being crazy liberals, and you're just like, nah, I think there's a better way, and I'm glad to see that wave coming. I really am. I've got with me a very special friend. His name is Murray Edwards. Murray puts up with me a lot. Murray, thank you for having patience with me as I go through this. It's been 20 years for the Edge, for Donna's Edge.
Wow, I didn't realize that. Congratulations.
Yeah, here's April the 1st.
Congratulations.
Do you know Tom Williams used to own radio stations and TV stations?
Who?
And Tom Williams in Alabama.
Yeah, I remember Tom.
Okay, Tom's a neat guy. So he gave me my start. And so what happened is I owned a business, and Tom was there. And he said, I'm about to start a talk show. It'll be lunchtime. And I said, okay, great. Connie Hancock would be a great talk show host. And he said, no, she's not going to do it. You are. Well, I started laughing. And I said, yeah, I won't even remember my name. Yeah, that'll be a good one. Yeah, I'm sure it would be. And he said, he said, everybody keeps mentioning your name. He said, but I keep saying, who needs to host the show? Your name just keeps popping up. He said, let's just try it. You can always say no if you don't want to do it. And I said, but Tom, you don't understand. Sometimes I don't remember what I had for breakfast that morning. You expect me to remember things on a show? And he said, you'll do it. You'll be fine. So we did that one taping, and it just took off. And thank you, Tom. Making it
well, it sort of reminds me of how I got into the lovely world of podcasting. I had no desire to get into podcasting.
Think about it.
And about 4 or 5 years ago, I actually spoke to a group, and a gentleman shows up and introduces himself and says, do you know who I am? And I'm going, I have no earthly idea who you are, but thank you for coming to the event. And details and other things. And next thing I know, I'm starting a podcast, which never really ever crossed my mind to do, but it's grown. My podcasts have grown. I do 2 podcasts. I do one that talks about what goes on here in our lovely state of Alabama, and then I do another national show that talks about the politics of what's going on up in Washington and how what they do in Washington affects us in every walk of life. A lot of people don't take in consideration that a state legislative body sometimes has to take in consideration a rule and a regulation that comes out of Washington. And they don't understand, the people don't understand, well, why did they vote for that? Well, guess what? There's money attached to that. So if they don't pass a certain bill a certain way and allow certain things to occur, that little fund that they thought they were going to get, they're not going to get. And we can only hope that now with a administration that is not going to put some of these far-fetched ideas out there. If you want the money, here's how you get the money, but you can't do some of the stuff that was pushed over the last administration. And talking with representatives and senators like I do on a regular basis, you'd be shocked. The people would be shocked at some of the requirements it takes to get a grant. And of course, we send our money up there. We expect to get our money back when we need it, but we don't necessarily expect there to be 14,000 different little rules and regulations attached to it to get our money back to do something we want to do in the state. So hopefully it's going to clean up this a little bit.
Oh, I hope so. It's my eyes have been so open with the show. And I wanted to thank you guys for the opportunity, the newscasters, to let me be part of that, because I'm just telling you, I feel freedom. I don't get too far fetched, but I feel like that you guys let me have a grandstand, and I definitely appreciate that.
We let everybody speak their mind as long as they don't go off the deep end. Then they can talk about what they want to, whether it's politics. We've got some people who talk about music. We've got some inspirational podcasts on the platform now. Avita King is on the platform. Several other groups are on the platform. Wonderful messages that they send out to the people that got, covering every aspect from just about every corner of the United States now.
Mm-hmm. And I just love it. And it's the newscasters.com.
Yes,
so
ma'am.
Guys, make sure you go out. And by the way, if you would like to be an advertiser, we sure appreciate you doing that. And you can always talk to Victoria Lee Scott about that. And you're going to love Victoria talking about going over the deep end. We go over the deep end when she's on the show, but I'm surprised you even air those shows sometimes.
Victoria's something else.
I love her. She's everything I want to be.
Mm.
I mean, she really is. She knows her stuff. She's just like with you. I mean, what do we do before we start the show? We just say, "What do you want to talk about?" We just kind of let it lead. Yep. And I think those are the best shows, and I really do love it that way. But now there's something because you and I always have a show before the show, and so you had mentioned something. It's a group. It's called Hands Off. What's that all about?
Well, it's the Democratic, the left, the progressive, whatever term people are giving to that group of individuals now. It's their way of protesting everything that's being done. They don't have any solutions for anything, but they think that if they can get enough people around the country to yell and scream and bang on drums and sing songs, that enough people are going to stand up and say enough is enough. And it's a very unique organization. They're tied to numerous left-wing organizations. George Soros is tied to them. And, so you have to figure that if he is funding this project, and they talk about now going to be trying to do this once a month across the country. On April the 5th, they had, I think, 1,100 protests across the country in various and sundry areas. Even in the state of Alabama, there's 4 or 5 of them here, which surprises me, but they had them in basically liberal cities. They had them in Florence, which is liberal, Huntsville, which is liberal, Birmingham, Montgomery, Mobile, Tuscaloosa, and Opelika. All those are blue-leaning, I guess you want people, from that area, because the 2 universities in those cities have all turned or started to lean blue. So they had the protest across the state of Alabama. But it's important that folks understand that they push this as a neighborhood local event. Let your neighbors speak. Let the people in your locale speak. That's not what it is. At least it was not. I went to the one in Montgomery, Alabama, and that's not what occurred in Montgomery, because I got caught up in a couple of caravans of cars that were coming in on I-85. And I'll just say several of those cars had what you might call unique bumper stickers and window stickers. And when I pulled in, I decided I'd walk around just to see how many cars were local. And lo and behold, there were those 4 or 5, 6 cars, and none of them were from the geographic area that is Montgomery County. A couple of them were from out of state, so it was not. Now, for most folks who may not know, Montgomery is 65% minority. Of the 200 people there, I saw 5. That does not represent the neighborhood, does not represent the city, does not represent the county. So they're bringing in, they get very irritated when you say bust. They're not bringing in big white buses, but what they're doing is bringing in people from all over the area and out of state to try to push this. And all they're doing is saying everything that Mr. Trump is doing, Mr. Musk is doing, is terrible. It's an attack on the Constitution. It's an attack on democracy, yet very few of them understand that we're not a democracy. We're a constitutional republic, but that doesn't matter to them. And they break out in song and dance. They tap on their little tom-toms, and the speakers pull out their phones and start reading from the script that every other one has across the country. And it's important to understand the groups that they're tied to. It's quite amazing. They've got Activate America. They've got Tax Fairness. Now, why Tax Fairness is involved in this, I don't know. Care in Action. MoveOn.org. Now, does MoveOn.org sound familiar? It's got a name to it that's attached to it.
Yeah.
You've got Common Cause. Now, there's another one that's got a S name attached to it. Greenpeace, the Green New Deal, Dem List. Now, what the Dem List is all the Democrats in a particular area, they send out text messages for them to go. And I can confirm that, because while I'm sitting there in Montgomery, I'm sitting in front of the Department of Public Safety, and I'm sitting on a bench. A gentleman walks up to me and asks, could he sit down? I said, sure. And I said, you here for the protest? And he goes, oh, no, I'm up here with a friend. And I'm going, what do you mean? And he said, well, I've got a friend who's been doing this for years. He got a text message and a phone call saying there's going to be a protest in Montgomery on tariffs. He says, is this thing about tariffs? And I'm going, well, it's much more than that. And of course, then he blurted out a few expletives that I will not repeat. And I said, well, why are you here? And he goes, well, I didn't want my friend to come up here by himself. So sometimes these things get out of control, get out of hand. So I thought I would come up here with him. And I said, okay. And went into a few more expletives. But by making the statement that where he lived is 120 miles outside of Montgomery. So they drove up, and, he was talking about what his buddy was doing. He said he's been doing this for years, and he just sort of tags along. And he said, to be perfectly honest with you, there's some nice looking young ladies sitting over there. I may go try to hit on one or two of them. He was there for the ladies. The other guy was there to yell and scream, so it's quite unique. But, some of these, again, some of these organizations that they've got tied to them, the Rainbow Push Coalition, they've got Planned Parenthood, they've got the UAW, they've got Demcast, they got CLEAR, and I will not tell you what CLEAR stands for, and the Center for Biological Diversity. Now, I'm not quite exactly sure why biological diversity, is what that is, to be perfectly honest with you.
I can guess.
Yeah. But this is who this group Hands Off is partnering with. It's right on their website. So I'm not exaggerating anything at all. But their goal primarily is to say that Elon Musk was not elected. Well, neither was Fauci. Neither were half these other people. But they do not like what he's uncovering. And they don't like that the public sector, federal government bureaucracy, whatever you want to call it, has grown to about 2.3 million individuals. That's way too many. And they're upset that some of these people are getting terminated. Well, it's just like any other business. If it was run like a business and a company finds out that, I've got this particular project is not working, then typically what happens is the people say, I'm sorry, we hate to let you go. Here's a month's salary, severance package or something. Go find you a new job. But they're really upset about that. And they got real upset when a whole bunch of people who are on probation got fired. Now, I don't know any company who, if somebody was on probation, and I worked as a consultant for many, many years, that if a situation was going on and a person was on probation and there needed to be a cut for whatever the reason, typically, most likely the people who were there on probation were the people who were let go first. They leave, from that standpoint. But that's all they're doing. They don't like the tariffs. They don't like what Trump has been doing, trying to rein in the bureaucracy. They don't like what Elon Musk has been trying to do to expose all of the nonsense that's been going on. I mean, he just found 6,000 immigrants who were on the terror watch list who had Social Security numbers and were most likely receiving Medicaid. You know, and they lie or mislead. I'll take the word lie back. I'll say they mislead, saying that the government, the Trump administration, is determined to end Social Security as we know it, Medicaid as we know it, Medicare as we know it. And he's never said we're going to end it. He said we're going to fix it. And it needs to be fixed because Social Security is due to run out of money, I think, in 2035, somewhere around that time frame. And if we do not take care of all the waste and fraud that our federal government has, then the next generation is not going to have Social Security to fall back on. They're going to have to work a heck of a lot longer and have other alternative methods of trying to, if they decide they want to retire, what they're going to do to live on.
Well, you know something, Murray, my antennas are just right up right now. Okay. All right. So with all these organizations who are actually backing this hands-off group here, that tells me a lot of money is being filtered in. Okay. So these people who are out there doing the grunt work, and it is grunt work, it takes a lot of time to do this. Okay. And you're out in the hot sun, you're out in the cold weather and all this kind of stuff. So the people who are funneling the money, they're sitting in their palace somewhere while the I don't know what you might want to call them. I want to say low life, but I just want to say, while these people who don't have a job apparently are being paid, okay, how are they being, okay, how's the money trickling down to people to be able to take the time to go out and do these events? But I would think they're not doing it for free.
Well, I sort of set social media on fire on April the 5th because I made some comments from observations that I saw at the event in Montgomery. And I can only speak for the one in Montgomery. Like I said, they were all over the country. You had people who were posting pictures of buses showing up with people getting out of them and people being paid. I'll sit here and tell you right now, I did not see a dime change hands between folks. However, there's a different way. Somebody's got to fund the projects. Somebody's got to get the permits. Somebody's got to do this. Somebody's got to do that. So there is money flowing into Hands Off or some of these other organizations. We know for a fact it is. In fact, the biggest heads up is this company called organization called Indivisible. That was funded and founded by George Soros. One of its members was on MSNBC, and it said they were the prime instigator for all these protests, and they planned and helped fund them. You know, so where the money's going, how the money's going, that's an entirely different situation. But I'm sure each one of these organizations is getting some type of package to say, okay, for your area, here's you X amount of dollars. Now, are these groups paying people to come to these meetings? I'm sure that it's going on. That they deny it and completely deny that this is not occurring, that they're not being paid. But with all the different groups that are tied to this, what's to say that Hands Off may not be paying them? But if there's people coming in from Rainbow Push Coalition, you know, the Green New Deal and all this kind of stuff, is money flowing to those groups. And then those groups are in turn handing out dollars because these things start like clockwork and they end like clockwork, you know. So this one was supposed to start at noon. I got there about 11:15. There was this little table and tent, and people would come up, go in, you know, do whatever they're going to do, and then they go sit down in front of on the Capitol steps. And then all of a sudden the drums would start banging and all the chants would stow and all the kumbaya stuff would occur. Now, I live pretty close to the one that they had in Dadeville. So after this one ended at 1 o'clock on the button, people started to dispatch. I drove to Dadeville. It was supposed to start at 3 o'clock. I got there about 2:30. Nobody was there. 2:45. Nobody was there. I walked around the corner to get a bottle of water, came back, sat back in my car. 5 minutes to 3, there was still nobody there. At about 2 minutes to 3, a caravan of cars showed up and circled the courthouse. And they all got out, pulled out their signs and walked to the corner and just stood there underneath one of the big shade trees because it was hot. It was like 85, 90 degrees. So they were in the shade. But the one thing I noticed at this group, it was of the 20 people that showed up, all but 2 were senior citizens. Down in Montgomery, I would dare say 50 to 60% of the people who participated in this event were senior citizens. Very few young generation, which this is what's the concerning thing about what these people are doing. They're convincing a lot of senior citizens that Trump is going to get rid of your Social Security. Trump is going to get rid of your Medicare. Trump is going to do this, or Elon Musk because of what he's doing. And they're putting the fear into a lot of people that if they were to take the time to fully look at what was going on, they know that's not what's current. But they've got a group of individuals, not only here, but all over the country, that they have convinced that, this is all out war on the American people. And it's really not. It's a way to try to save what we have, because we could not continue down the same path that we were on. And it's just an interesting tidbit that people need to understand that who is behind all of this. These are left-wing, progressive, in some situations, actually socialist groups that are tied to this one group trying to pull everything together. And that ought to be a huge concern to the American people.
I've got a few takeaways on that. So you mentioned a number of senior citizens that are involved in that. I'm taking it a different way. So, because before they've really tried to cater to the young folks. Sure. I mean, they really have. So do you think they've lost grip with young folks? Because I'm just telling you, the young folks that I'm seeing right now are wearing Trump hats. It's just,
I agree.
Do you think they're trying to go back to the old Democrats and try to activate some kind of newism with them?
I don't know, Don. I had one person, we were talking about it the other day, and he said, this is not your World War II generation senior citizens. These are your hippies from the 70s. And they protested by singing and chanting, and that's what they're doing. I mean, they had Joan Baez at an event someplace over the weekend, and she had changed some of the words of her song. So is it that group that grew up in the 60s, late 60s, early 70s, that we would lovingly call hippie dippies, type situations. And now.
Please don't do the Woodstock thing and take your clothes off, people.
That would have been ugly. That would have been ugly. So are they catering to that group, and they were able to convince them back in the, 60s and 70s. And now their mindset hasn't changed. That's the way they've been all their entire life. So now that they have reached the age, of retirement, that it's easy to get them persuaded. But I was really stunned at the number of senior citizens at both the events. I had some folks up in some of these other areas, and they could concur that the majority of the people there were above 62, and older. But I agree with you. I do think that
and I most certainly do not vote for I don't think anything's going to happen to Social Security.
I don't either. I mean, and I have to concur with you about the younger generation. I do think that there's a lot of young men and women who went to college, got just yelled and screamed at, maybe because they were somewhat conservative. Their voices were shut down, and now they're not afraid to say what's on their mind. And I talk with people of all age groups, And I can say I do believe that this 25 to 40 age group right now is basically said enough's enough. The Democratic Party does not represent me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they've walked away from, in my opinion, they've walked away from the general working people of the country. They have tied themselves to certain groups, and that's what they push. And they think that these small groups of individuals are going to be the ones that's going to help them make that next step. You know,
I don't see how you do it with a small group. How many people did you say showed up for that?
There were, I would say, maybe 200 on the steps, and there was 10 to 15 folks that were standing out. If they were expecting a huge group down the street of Dexter Avenue, it did not occur. It was all around the steps of the Capitol building. And, you know, the amazing thing, I had two other conversations with folks. There was a young man, of course, anybody's younger than me, I say as a young man, but he's probably late 30s, early 40s. He was on the sidewalk and he was listening. Mm-hmm. And he turned and looked to his left. And when he looked to his left, he saw this guy holding this big sign up that says, "Protect the Constitution." And he just shook his head and turned around. And actually, I was standing across the street. And he comes over and stands, you know, beside me. And we struck up a conversation. I'm going, "Well, what do you think?" And I said, and he was honest. He said, "You know, I came down here to see this. I've heard about it. I just want to hear what this group has to say. And I was trying to be here with an open mind. And I welcome that. I mean, if you want to see difference of opinion, that's a wonderful thing to do." And he said, "But when I turned over there and I saw this guy hanging, swinging around a sign that says 'Protect the Constitution,' it goes, they have no earthly idea what they're talking about. Mm-hmm. What they're talking about does not protect the Constitution. Everything that they're talking about destroys the Constitution." This is, I just couldn't take any more of it. And so we sat there and talked. He said, "Well, this must be the smoking area." Of course, the guy beside me had lit up a cigar, and I'm going, you know, more power. So this another guy walks across, and he said, "Well, this must be the smoking area." I'm going, "Hey, if you want to smoke, you're not going to bother me, buddy." And he pulls out a pink vape, and starts talking about different things. And I asked him, it's basically the same thing I asked the gentleman that was to my left. I asked this gentleman over here to my right, "What do you think about the event?" He said, "Man, this thing is fantastic. This is wonderful." So what are they talking about? And he said, "Well, you know, Musk is doing this and Trump is doing this, and, you know, on and on and on." And I said, "Well, tell me exactly what Musk is doing." "Well, you know." When I'm going, "Yeah, I know, but do you know?"
Uniting the United States, yeah.
Yeah. And he goes, he gives me this weird sort of look on his face. And I said, "Well, you said Trump was doing terrible things. What's Trump doing that's so bad?" "Well, again, well, you know what Trump's doing." And I said, "Yeah, I know exactly what Trump's doing. And it's not exactly what they're talking about on the steps of the Capitol building." And his eyes got real big. And I think it dawned on him that I was not there necessarily to listen to the propaganda, you know, from that. And he turned around and walked back over to the group that was standing on the sidewalk. But it was eye-awakening, you know, Donna, and if this is going on across the country, they're going to get people's mindsets, because that's all they're trying to do. And as I've told folks before, I think you and I have talked about it in the past, if you don't have solutions, you protest. And they have no solutions. They have no answers for anything.
Well, then I don't want to listen to it then. I'm not going to go to the group. I'm not going to listen. It's a waste of air. Okay. I'm saying this because I'm a senior citizen. I'll be 66 in June. Okay. So I'm going to say this. So if they're trying to make something happen with senior citizens, we don't have that much time left. You better hurry. You might want to make a quick thing.
You know, I've got a few years on you, and it's just truly amazing to listen to people talk. And I always, you know me, I'm an open-minded kind of person. I don't yell at anybody. I don't scream at anybody. You can talk about whatever you want to. But when you're more confused after you have a conversation with one of those individuals than you were before you started having the conversation, you have to sit there and go, they really have lost any kind of sense of sensibility, because they think this is going to fix things. They fully believe that they can convert enough people to when the midterms come around in 26, that they're going to be able to unplug enough Republicans and put enough far left Democrats into the House and at least take one part of the three-legged stool, out. And, I will say this, I've had this conversation with several Republicans across our state. Y'all had better wake up, and you'd better start acting like what needs to be done to make sure you protect the seats that you have. Because if you don't, the money is going to funnel in to these states. If there's any inkling that a Republican can be unseated, the money is going to flow in, and they're going to do everything they can to try to, unseat an incumbent Republican. Now, the Republicans need to counter and go after the Democrats. They need to go after their record, their voting record, the comments that they've said and things that they have done, and actually build a coalition that's going to potentially take out some of these Democratic candidates that are going to be up for re-election in 2026. Here in our state, it doesn't seem like they care, and that's really very, very disturbing.
That's troubling.
And we'll just keep what we have. We don't have the money to fight here. We don't have the money to fight there. We'll call them out on their record. Try to build some type of intensity in the two districts that are currently held by Democrats to at least put the seed of doubt in some of the constituents that reside in that area, to where there's a possibility that a Republican can unplug them. Now, they'll be able to do that in some other states outside Alabama, but it's if they feel like the Republicans feel like they've got it in the bag, they don't, because this group, and in fact, if in fact they do start doing this on a monthly basis, they're going to start convincing people eventually that the Republicans don't care what the American people want, but everything that the Republicans are working on is usually an 80-20, 80-10, 90-10 deal. People don't want men going against women in the women's sports. They don't want this, they don't want that. And, so most of the policies that the left has right now are not genuine policies that I think the majority of the American people want.
I agree. Murray, we've got to go into a commercial break.
Sure.
We'll be right back in just a few minutes.
Twin City Used Car Sales has been serving drivers in the Northeast Alabama area for years with a quality selection of late model used cars, SUVs, and pickup trucks. On top of our extensive selection and competitive prices, we offer professional auto financing services for used car buyers of all credit levels. Whether you've just begun your search or you're ready to secure your next vehicle, at Twin City Used Car Sales, you will drive away with the vehicle of your dreams. The sales and finance staff at Twin City Used Car Sales looks forward to serving you, and you can apply for financing online before your visit to our used dealership in Gadsden, Alabama. Check us out on the web at twincityusedcars.com or go by our location at 901 First Avenue, Gadsden, Alabama. We sincerely look forward to serving you. At Lamone's Mexican Restaurant, located in Henniger, Alabama, and voted Best Mexican Restaurant of DeKalb County, Alabama 2020, we're here to serve you with authentic Mexican cuisine. Order easily online by going to lamonsmex.com or call 256-657-3999 to place your order. We're open Sunday through Thursday, 11 a.m. to 9 p.m. and Friday and Saturday, 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. Whether you're celebrating a cozy date night for two or a celebration for a crowd, at Lamone's you'll love our atmosphere and friendly servers. Thank you for dining with Lamone's Mexican Restaurant.
Are you ready?
We all wonder what tomorrow will bring, but the future lays itself at the feet of the prepared and surrenders to the will of the persistent. It's not easy, but today shapes you so you can shape tomorrow. With Northeast Alabama Community College, when the future asks if you're ready, you can answer.
Yes.
Begin your future at Northeast Alabama Community College.
At Liberty Bank, we're all about community, whether it's to help with a charity fundraiser or help families in need. Toys at Christmas or a local football team, we're here for you. You see, we realize the importance of family. Sometimes it's to build a new home or necessary home repairs. We're here for you. If you like the feel of a small town bank with all the conveniences of a big city bank, we're here to serve you. You will find us at any of our convenient locations in DeKalb, Marshall, Etowah, and Blount counties in North Alabama. You can call and speak with any of our friendly staff at 256-659-2175 or check us out on the web at libertybankal.com. And thank you for your support of our community. Member FDIC Equal Housing Lender.
Good afternoon. We're back. My name is Donna, and I'm your host of Donna's Edge Talk Show, where truth definitely matters. You can find us on television, and it's syndicated and found on Roku, Apple TV, and Amazon.fire through Abundant Television. And definitely appreciate Rob. Rob, thank you so much for making this happen. Rob Pat's his name, and so he's just a terrific guy. And I've known him for years, and when he started up this television, it was absolutely wonderful. So we got folks all over the world who watch this show, and I appreciate that. And then we also are syndicated on a podcast. It's the Newscasters.com, and this guy right here is making it happen. Murray Edwards, tell me, why is the Newscasters growing so fast? I mean, it's like you said it's going to grow slow, and it's not growing slow; it's growing fast. And congratulations.
Yeah. It's been a pleasant surprise, to be perfectly honest with you, because it does take time to get a new platform out there. This is something that you can't turn it on and 15 minutes later, have an abundance of people. But we have grown substantially, and we're grateful for everybody who has come on to the platform. I think now that people understand that they can speak their mind, in the way that we position the shows as we push them out across the social media world, where they might get tagged, they won't get tagged with us, because we try to do the right stuff on the back end side, the SEO, the metadata, and all that kind of good stuff. And then as we push this information out, where somebody may put something out on YouTube and it's got their picture blasted there, and the topics and all this kind of stuff. Well, the people who do the little blue checks or whatever they want to call it. Oh, no, that person can't. No. Well, we can publish it and push it out in a manner that they see the topic, but they don't necessarily see all the content on the front end side. So we've been very fortunate. Of the thousands of shows we have pushed out, we've only had one that got flagged. And within 15 minutes, it was unflagged. So we've been very successful. We've been very fortunate. And we've got people from all walks of life now that are coming onto the platform talking about women's health, inspiration, news, commentary, opinion, interviews from all types of people from all over the country talking about their expertise, because there are people who know things that aren't necessarily on the big networks. People need to understand that. They're just as educated, just as informed as somebody that you would see on, let's say, Fox or whatever. The nice thing about what we do is it's not a 2-minute soundbite. It can be 15, it can be 20, it can be 30, however long that person has to talk about their particular subject matter that they are an expert at. So I think that's where we're starting to grow. We're having a lot of interest from basically podcasters from all over the country. We're pretty specific. I mean, like I said, we don't want people that are yelling and screaming about things. We want folks who are just being honest and telling it like it is, and informing, educating, and informing. Because as we were talking on the commercial break, unfortunately, there's a lot of folks who just take things for granted. They've got locked into one particular platform or newscast type things, and they're not hearing both sides of the story. And there's a pro and a con for everything. Maybe that you don't like that, but maybe you like that. But you need to hear and you need to educate yourself on all of the entire topic matter instead of just jumping the gun. So I would recommend, your listeners and whatnot, go to thenewscasters.com and check out the studio. And you'll see the list of the men and women that we have that have joined us. And, click on one or two of them and listen to them. Donna joined us early on and was part of our beta team. And, she's right there with the folks who are, downloading the episodes or watching them. We have an app now that you can get from either the Google Store or the Apple Store. So if you don't want to do it on your website or your phone or whatnot, you can download the app and you can scroll down and see, well, I want to see what Donna's talking about, or I want to see what Victoria is talking about, or you want to, see what I'm talking about, from that perspective, or any of the other contributors that we have. You can just push it, listen, and hopefully educate yourself.
I love it. I mean, I love the platform, and I've got a different take on it. People are so used to being force-fed information. I'm going to give you a good analogy, or just an example, analogy. Okay, Chelsea Clinton had absolutely no experience in broadcasting anything, okay? Maybe a Facebook Live or something every now and then, but I'm talking about this. For her to have been paid $500,000 to be on a network, it was just like, and she was terrible at it. I mean, she was just absolutely horrible. Well, that let us all know that it's who you are. Okay. It's not because of experience. It has nothing to do with your talent. It's who you are. Because had Chelsea Clinton been me, she wouldn't have been offered that opportunity.
Oh, sure. It's connections. It's all. I mean, take a look at, and all of them are guilty of it. So I can't sit there and say that Fox is any better than CNN or CNN's any better than MSNBC. They've all got what I would classify the political elites that they have time after time after time after time, and you get the same story time after time after time. One channel is going to lead more conservative, and the other one's going to be, more left-leaning. One of them's going to be way out there in outer space, from that type of situation. And what we've tried to do is give anybody a voice. Now, I will admittedly say that 99% of the people who are on the platform are conservative in nature, because their voices are the ones who have been stymied for so long.
We've been stifled.
And the nice thing of what we offer is you can do an audio show if you want to. Both my podcasts are audio. You can do video if you want to. If you don't want to do a show, you can write an article. So we have an opinion page to where somebody wants to state their opinion on a particular matter. Well, they send me they send it to me. I make sure it's correct with all the dots and all that kind of stuff. And then we publish. I've got half dozen different people now across the country that are sending us articles that, we're publishing for them. So it's grown nicely. It continues to grow. And, recommend to your listeners, your watchers, go click on it and see what you think. And if you're someone who's interested in doing a podcast, you can send me a message and I'll be more than happy to talk through. I've got 3 phone calls this week scheduled to folks who are thinking about doing a podcast. Be like me. 5 years ago, this would have never ever crossed my mind, and I love every minute of it now. So
it's a whole lot of fun. It's great to have your voice heard. It most certainly is, because there are just so many. You can do it and not and not wonder, am I going to be taken off the air because of what I said? You don't have to worry about that. And I just think it's amazing. And you never know the talk show hosts who are with the Newscaster studio, you never know who their guests are going to be. Coming up next week, I've got Silk from Diamond and Silk coming back on the show again.
Oh, fantastic.
And so since she's, well, I'll tell you what, I don't get to talk at all during that one. All I've got to do is say,
I can only imagine. Totally.
She goes for it. But I have wonderful guests, and I'm thrilled that you guys will be on my show as well. So thank you again for that platform. So we've been talking about different groups and, and different challenges that are out there to find the right news and to find the right news source. There are a few things that I kind of get a red flag about. Okay, so if somebody is mentioning, let's just say they want to talk about the color red. I don't know why I'm choosing the color red, but they're supposed to be an authority on the color red. Okay, but they get on there and they're talking about the color blue, or they're talking about the color. I want to hear about the color red. That's why I'm listening to you. It just feels like most of the media is that they get the same memo. I mean, they're all told to say the same thing from each other. So there's not really a variety, but the Newscaster studio, there's a variety. And I like that.
Yeah, we're not what you'd call a catchphrase group. I mean, you can turn on some of the platforms and what the catchphrase of the day is, or the phrase of the week is, because every broadcaster is using the same terms. That you won't ever hear that, I don't think, on any of the folks who are doing their shows on the Newscasters. So it is a broad spectrum of individuals, and they all are very up to speed, up to snuff, or whatever word you want to call, on the topics that they're talking about. We both have done interviews with Alan Mendenhall. Alan was on my show just last week, and we're talking about the end of the Department of Education, and just laid it all out. And I guarantee you, I would not think, with the kind of conversation we had for about 30, 45 minutes, that, most people don't understand the inner workings of the Department of Education and what it means by shifting what they're doing in Washington, D.C. to shift it to the states, and what is going to be the challenge that the states are going to have to try to put the Department of Education in their state back together again, because some states do it very well, some states not so well. And so that was one of the topics I wanted to talk to him about, so we've had talks about, I'm just talking about my shows in general, educating people on what the tariffs are all about. Not the glitzy tough stuff. This is when they started. This is what happened. And this is why tariffs, to the extent that Mr. Trump is doing them right now, why, if people will have the patience, they're going to work. And the problem that most of us have, unfortunately, is our level of patience is at a minute amount, so if it doesn't work instantaneously, well, this is the problem. And then you get the spin from the different platforms out there that, well, see, we told you it wasn't going to work, like the price of eggs. When he went into office, the price of eggs were one thing, and they expected in 3 days after he got into office, the price of eggs were going to drop tremendously. Well, they have come down. The inflation rate has come down, and the jobs in manufacturing have gone up. So it just takes a little bit of time, and you would hope that my hopes are that people will start getting just a little bit of patience out there and understand that you can't turn on a dime. It's like the old big battleship, the old term. You can't turn a battleship on a dime. It takes some time, a big sweeping turn to make it work, and that's what's going to occur over the next 3.5 years or so. And
I still say it's going to be record time, though. I don't think it's going to take that long because he has this huge team of people they're all in the same mind. They all have the same outcome in mind. Things they want to see happen. I think it's just going to work on record time.
I agree.
And it's amazing to me, though. Okay, so we just endured 4 years of this poor guy suffering elder abuse, Joe Biden. He was abused. Now, I didn't care much for him before then, but I'm just saying that the guy was definitely abused. We all got to admit that. But there are people who actually didn't think that he was suffering. All you had to do is look at him out on the campaign trail. You could know something was wrong.
Correct.
Something was terrible wrong. There were so many people. It took the end of his tenure for people to actually say, yeah, you're right. There was something wrong with it. Well, you couldn't see before then.
The amazing thing to me, Donna, is some of the folks who are claiming that he was sharp as a tack, bright as ever, he outruns them and all. Some of these folks are now coming out with books. It is exact opposite of everything that they talked about while he was in office, while most Americans with any inkling of common sense would take a look and say that something's not quite right with this guy. Yeah. He's got a problem. I don't wish any ill will on anyone. But when you take a look at, and my father had dementia, you see that same look that my father had when he had it. I'm going, the demand's not all the way there. And as I said earlier, his family should be ashamed of themselves because they knew this man was not competent. He didn't have the sense to do what he needed to do. And then the auto pen announcement came out a couple of weeks ago that, some of the pardons and everything he was written was not signed by him. They were signed by auto pen. And, it's one thing to send a constituents a letter signed with an auto pen. It's different to sign a piece of legislation or an executive order or a bunch of pardons with an auto pen. That's not right, and I'm not a legal expert, but it would seem to me that if they can prove that it has occurred on legal documents, then a piece of legislation that might have been used or a pardon or executive order, that no longer exists anymore because it was not signed by the person who was supposedly had the authority to do so.
Well, let's just say that you watch CNN news all the time. You watch nothing else, and you just watch 24/7. And all you hear about is, hey, he's sharp as a tack and all that kind of stuff. You could have looked at the debate. After the debate with President Trump and President Biden, okay, after that debate, you remember when the way he shuffled off, the way he walked off the stage, and Jill was talking to him. And Jill was looking at him going, you did a good job. Like you did your 6-year-old who was in the spelling bee. I mean, she was talking to him like that, as if something was wrong. And he was just looking at her like, almost like, I did, Mommy. Look on his face. And I was just like, why are people eating this up?
To this day, Donna, there's still people out there on social media because I spend, as I know you do too, I spend time out on social media just seeing what everybody's talking about. And I don't know whether they're paid influencers or what it is, but they're putting, still putting pictures of this was the sharpest man alive. This was the greatest president alive.
No, he wasn't.
And he was never really, in all sincerity, was never really a very good politician, period, even through his ranks of what he did when he was in the Senate. Yeah. And Obama had to pick somebody that had ties to him, but he knew he couldn't be overrun by Biden. So he picked Biden as his running mate. And it's got to tell you everything that when
Ann McMahon, he even told where the bunkers were, for goodness sake.
Yeah, and you sit there and you go, well, if the guy had been a competent vice president for 2 terms, you would have thought that Mr. Obama would have said, run, run, Joe, run, Joe. No, Joe, I don't want you to run. I'm going to put Hillary in his place, from that standpoint. So the credibility that some of the people had in this election cycle, they've lost it.
Yeah, they have. But I want to mention, we only have 4 minutes left in the segment, so I wanted to get your view on this.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so we have President Trump and we got JD. I mean, to me, it's just a winning combination. Okay, so the people who are in the power who would love to see Trump gone, they have to be thinking twice, okay, because JD is not your second banana type. He's not your Ed McMahon. with Johnny Carson. He's nothing like
I
what
agree
we
with
had before. So they got to be thinking, well, we'd have to get rid of both of them, because I really feel confident that if something happened to Trump, and I don't want anything to happen to Trump, that Trump's doing an awesome job. So, but I would love to see JD president in 4 years. Okay, so they've got to be going, now, wait a minute. If we get rid of Trump, JD's younger. I don't know that he's got more energy than Trump has, but I'm just saying.
The days of the 25th Amendment, they're not going to exist during this term, because they know who they're going to get if they try to push the 25th Amendment. You know, people pushed the 25th on Biden, and I think they were hesitant to do it because it's the exact opposite with Miss Kamala. What are we going to get if Miss Kamala is now president? You know, so I think he's done a superb job. He's stepped up. He doesn't mind speaking his mind, which is a wonderful thing. The nice thing about it, I think, with the whole administration right now, Donna, is there's none of them politically correct. They're going to say, no, that's not correct, and they don't mind calling them out. On the press conference he did this morning, I can't remember what network it was, she was asking some really stupid questions, and he said, you know, nobody watches your network anymore, so no, I'm not even going to bother answering your question. What president would do something like that in the past? You know, they wouldn't. Or why would they let the press in, you know, to a cabinet meeting, or at 2:00 in the morning coming back from Miami, he's got a press conference with the people on the plane? That kind of stuff just hasn't occurred over the last 4 years.
Think about this. Remember when Obamacare came through, and of course there was Biden again with an open mic. He didn't know that he was turned. You remember what he said to Obama?
Yes,
they
ma'am.
were hugging each other, and he said, "This is a big effing deal."
Yeah,
he said that.
Yeah.
Well, you know what that told me? That gave me volumes of information. That told me they're making money off of Obamacare.
Oh, sure.
They were celebrating as if they had just won the lottery.
Yeah. And I heard one person the other day, because of the comment that, you know, he postponed the tariffs for 90 days while he negotiates with all these different countries.
Uh-huh.
They now want immediate investigation from the SEC, saying, well, there was insider trading. Well, we've been tracking political figures for years suspecting insider trading. Miss Pelosi, you know, Miss Warren, you know, Mr. Schumer. You know, how do you make $200,000 a year and have 5 houses? You know, something not quite right. You know, so I think that was one of the dumbest statement that one of them could make. Yeah, we need to do some insider trading. Check out. Another day.
I'm sorry. I just think it was, first of all, no common sense to that comment whatsoever. None. It's almost like the kid. Okay, so here's what my parents used to correct us. And they used to think this was the dumbest thing on earth. So my brother would break a lamp. Well, he's not going to fess up to it. You know why he didn't want to fess up to it? Because my mother would say something like, well, I'm going to whip both of you so that way I'll know I've got the right one. I was like, well, that's not fair to me, because I didn't do it. And he's not going to fess up because he wants to see me get the same beating up that he's going to get. So, I mean, there are so many things that just absolutely do not make sense. But I will end it with this. I think if something happened to Trump, JD could take right over.
Sure.
Not the dumb second banana VP that we've always had. This guy right here is extremely capable. I think he can make it work.
I agree with you completely.
And I know you guys are making it work too with the podcasters, with the newscasters.
We're doing our best. We're trying.
Well, you are. It's working because it's a different platform. It's not like we're all handed the same memo told to say the same thing.
True.
And people get to hear a different view out of each podcaster. And that's what makes it work. Thank you for giving us that opportunity.
Thank you for being part of it.
And thank you guys also. Thank you. And go on ahead, continue sending emails. You're not bothering me at all. Send emails to Donna at donnasedge.com. That's Donna at donnasedge.com. See you next time. Bye-bye.